So we are back again this week with Making Friends with Monsters, and we're going to work on Veilport a little bit more. If you haven't watched the first episode, you should definitely go back and check it out. I'll throw it in the cards right there. It really started to come together at the end, and I think, at least for myself, and I'm hoping for you guys too, as I've been away from it, but thinking about it, I've had a lot of ideas, so I want to throw some of them at you tonight and see if any of them stick, and we'll see what happens. So how you guys doing?
Doing okay.
I'm all right. I'm sort of finding a good spot. There's an awesome sunset right now.
Well, let me shoot some things your way.
Yeah, let's see what you got.
There it is.
Oh, nice.
Oh, wow, that is gorgeous. Oh my God. Queen Ethra. What if she has an assistant?
Well, she's got to have an assistant.
I'm sure many, yeah. Perhaps a special one.
Yeah, like a head one that kind of dictates what all the other ones do. Maybe her personal assistant in a way. Let me hit you with my biggest idea before we get too deep into that. And my idea would be that after Alistair's wars ended, and the heroes that we know as, Brisby and Risen and Cal all were victorious over Alistair, which we all know they will be eventually. Let's say the Drow played a big part in that. Let's say they turned tail and they decided to side with the humans and the elves and the dwarves. And for that, they were allowed to come up and build the city known as Veilport, and it's actually a Drow city. It's completely open to all races by law alone, though. If you go in, you might get looked, get a lot of sideway glances from people if you're a human, or especially an elf or a dwarf going through the city. But it kind of tied into the whole Shadow Vale, Veilport. Maybe there's already some kind of existing tunnels that connect them anyway because of the city that they've been granted by the citizens of Athalia.
Well, it makes sense, if they're going to make their way out from the Underdark, they got to go somewhere, and that would be the logical first location.
And what we didn't think about, like when you enter these mountain range, before you get to the Underdark, you're still going to have to go through a dwarven city before we even hit, probably another week before you hit Shadow Vale, and then from Shadow Vale another week or so before you start hitting the Crystal Caverns, most likely a month from the surface to the core.
I was going to say, I'm not really familiar with Drow as a race, like how they are about, like daylight and being on the surface and whatnot.
No, that's perfectly understandable. Drow became more and more popular after Drizzt Do'Urden became such a heroic and interesting character after, R.A. Salvatore created. And I think a lot of people, that grabbed the attention of like, whoa, what are these Drow? What are they all about? So it generally in Dungeons & Dragons, Drow are somewhat magical creatures. They can, as long as they don't come to the surface, they can levitate, they can cast globes of darkness, and there's a third web spell I think they can cast just on command. They're very powerful creatures. Their women or female folk are actually the hierarchy. They're the ones that kind of rule everything, and there's a matron mother of the master house. There's usually a house. This is going into Forgotten Realms, not into my setting, but generally speaking, it kind of works out the same, where the female queen of the house that rules over the other houses in this, Underdark setting. In my case, Shadow Vale is more of a city. It was originally intended to be under a jungle canopy, but I decided to put it underground because it just made more sense in the grand scheme of things. But yes, when Drow or Shelven Elves which is the case often in Athalia, come to the surface, slowly they begin to lose their magical abilities. They won't be able to levitate. Any magical items that are built or forged or invoked underground usually start to break and fall apart and won't have their magical abilities anymore. So, and the sun is a huge deterrent. They're supposed to get a disadvantage if they're in combat on the surface. However, that's something I'm kind of lenient with based on how long the character's been on the surface, because their eyes will adapt eventually.
So is all this from Forgotten Realms?
For the most part, yeah. And for the most part, Drow on my world would work the same. Their houses wouldn't be the same. The female isn't necessarily the leader of the house in every case. In some cases, yes. In some cases, no.
Okay, so how old is Veilport going to be? That sounds like it's going to be a new city then. What kind of period are we talking about after Alistair's demise?
Oh, you think he's going to die? Is that what you're saying? You think your party
I
is just
said
going to take
demise. That doesn't have to be a death, does it?
No, I would say in my mind, we're setting this within 100 years after those events.
Okay.
I'd like this Veilport to have been there long enough to be seasoned, to have, shipments coming in and going out, and also probably long enough that the drow have grown used to living on the surface, or at least the 3,000 that exist in this city.
Well, if you want to add a little more complexity to it, it could be a port that already existed. Maybe it was kind of going in decay, kind of not as popular as it was in the past, and starting to kind of lose population. And maybe so they were just granted that town, which can kind of create this dynamics between the drow and the humans or whoever occupied it before. I mean, if you want to add another layer to that.
Yeah, I was thinking about what would have led up to the events before, and I think it would be cool if there was like an outreach from the capital city of Athalia. There's an outreach from the dwarves that took in all the people who survived on the surface. There's an outreach from the elves from Ashtaranalth, and maybe not as big, but like they all work together to repair and build this city, especially the citizens that are already there that are watching their city fall apart. It would be cool if it all ended in a festival where traditions were shared, but it was the last time that peace was really comfortable in the city. After that, it was always tense. The drow kind of reverted back to their way, scheming, planning, plotting.
It's kind of a bittersweet. Maybe, the Athalia, the capital of Athalia, grants them the funds to fix it up by giving the drow a homeland above land. So there's this bittersweet that they're getting their city rebuilt, but they're also losing it. It came at a price. Even though it was already kind of going to decay, at least it was theirs. So, I mean, they could put a lot of dynamics in it. You could have some people that support it, some that don't, and some that are apathetic, and who knows.
And I think there should be drow factions in the city that are also empathetic to the people there. I think there should be, like the people who are really taking advantage of the advantage was given to them by, the people of Athalia. Normally they would be shunned and kicked out of cities. But, the people who have grown to accept this and be like, thank you, this is something beyond our wildest dreams. We hate living under, most elves want to see the stars at night. They want to see the sun in the sky, no matter how bad it burns their eyes. This was a punishment, a torture to have to live underground all these hundreds and thousands of years.
Yeah, because I kind of see the character Riven. I kind of see him kind of like within a faction like that, with his shadow children and the shadow people, that they're kind of a faction that was kind of starting to go against the grain, didn't like the way things were being held, the way things were being governed in Shadowland. How deep do you want to go into the creation of the city and the governings, the dynamics, the economy? Because I mean, that could be a project that could go on for quite a while. And
if we just have a brief history of how the city was built and how it was founded and how it was granted to the drow people, I think just, a simple 4 or 5 paragraphs to explain what led to where it is now is fine. That's just not going to play much into the story. We can mention the shadow children.
Shadow children.
Yeah, and kind of bring that into the story there. Maybe even mention a few notable characters like the Queen and Riven and the wizard that runs the curio shop that Artie came up with. I love that little gnome too. I've been thinking about him a lot.
He's a good one.
I love rich characters like that when they're NPCs and the characters can run into them and you get a good feel and you kind of know how to run them, and because they're already in your head somewhere. So we need to think of some locations of what the party has now just been shipwrecked here for, let's say it's going to be 2 weeks before the repairs can be done. Already it's strange for them, I would imagine, coming into this port. Perhaps it's not a place they've traveled to or visited before, but they've heard of. They're in town. They're going to have to get a room for 2 weeks or so or find a place to stay. Perhaps they can acquire an apartment or something, however we want to handle that. But there is a building right there and a landlord or an inn. We need a bartender or barkeep, an innkeeper. if they're going to stay there. I think that's a good way to start because they've just crash landed. We can take them from the docks to an area of town where there's several inns and taverns. We can give them 3 to 4 options, depending on how many we want to map out.
The options of hotels or tavern, whichever setting they want to make their home base.
Or they might even want to. I mean, at this point, if they're 12th level, they might have enough money to, purchase a small warehouse to set up an encampment. And if they're going to be that long, I don't know if you would do that if you're only going to be there 2 weeks. Probably not. Most likely looking at like an apartment situation or a tavern or an inn that'll offer you a discount for multi, days or weeks or whatever. So what's the name of, we should come up with a few tavern names.
Yeah, and I think it'd be kind of cool if we are going to go with the mixture of that it was an established town that is a network port town that is now a drow town. You would want kind of names that are kind of mixed. You've got some old names, and then you're going to have some new names.
Yeah, I would definitely say there are still some inns and taverns run by the people who originally ran them. And then there's also, of course, like you said, like the new taverns and inns that are probably clearly definably drow when you walk by them. They're new constructions because they're replacing buildings that have, gone to waste or whatever.
Okay, so as far as the original history of the city, what were the inhabitants? Were they human? If there's dwarves within the mountains, I imagine there would have been some good amount of dwarves that originally were populating this town. It's a very it's a good hub for everything because the further north you go, you're going to run into more human communities like Porthos, which is the large port city in Athalia. Then if you traveled from the city northeast a little bit, you'd hit Ashtarnalith, which is the Elven community or the Elven capital. Directly to the east, there's Furbolgs, and there are drow and dwarves. And if you travel just south, then you've got like more of halfling and human communities there. So there's probably a mix, I would say. It wouldn't be surprised to find a human, an elf. An elf is going to be a stretch. Like an elf that's still in the town now is probably just being defiant at this point, being like, this was my town. No drows are going to make me leave, no matter how many other elves, found it intolerable and had to go. That might be an interesting tavern owner right there, an elf that's been kind of stubborn. Maybe he's a little older. He's got nothing really left to do. He's reaching the end of his days. He's nearly 1,000 years old. Where else is he going to go? I don't know. Yeah, that could be an interesting NPC. Most port cities would have been probably a ship owner, ship company owner. So probably human. Good human community. Yeah, I'd say it's mostly a human community. We probably need a name. Well, before the drow. yeah, before the drow. Why don't we stick with like Steelport or Ironport, or Foundry or Foundry Port or Port Foundry? As far as its original name? Yeah, just so we have it. It's nothing that has to be, often referenced. I mean, maybe if you went into a tavern, they would still refer to their city as, yeah, you could have some crusty old patrons in it. Although if they're human, there wouldn't be any original. No, not from the original founders, no. Yeah. But it could be a generational thing, like my great-grandpappy started in this town, and I ain't going nowhere. So the general feel of the city for humans has got to be kind of sort of defiance, where they want to, still have their city, no matter what part, if it was falling apart or not, it was still their city, like you said earlier. I imagine that's just the general mood of that population, but the drow population are probably, I would imagine, thriving. And I'd like to think that knowing the drow, that they're always thinking 3 steps ahead. They're always planning, plotting, scheming. I'd like to think that it's broken the city into several factions too, where you do have, the queen that kind of rules over everything, sets the rules. But, there might be a leader of the low income quarter
who has a say in things and how things go. He's got enough power, enough people behind him, perhaps enough coin in his own purse to keep, a voice active and important in the people's minds,
Yeah.
and
Then maybe it got to the point where they found it necessary almost to each quarter had to have their own mayor.
So we could break the city into 4 sections.
Or was it? Well, that'd be too many, you think?
It might be, yeah. I was just thinking about that because I'm like, then there has to be everything that's in one kind of in another one. Not necessarily. If you needed to get to, Armorsmith, you might have to travel over 2 districts or whatever. I would say maybe 3.
Because I would think you would have one that's kind of a faction that is going to be all about the Drow. So you're going to have a faction that's all about the old city. And then you're going to have a faction that's just kind of wanting to make this one collective, and they want everything to work out for the better of everybody.
I love this. I love it. Yeah, the balance. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Now, the reason I was kind of asking about the what kind of race or species now, what kind of species was kind of the founders, kind of goes back to the naming of pubs and the taverns and the businesses, because I would think it was mostly human, like in the UK. A lot of places like bars or pubs are named
McAllister's
it's going to be a last name, a surname, or a lot of times like the animals, like Red Bull or the Red, or they usually have an animal name with some other distinguishing word, like a red or color and then of an animal. And
all right, let's do a lightning round here. I've got 4 right here of possible places that they might stay. Maybe 2 of them can be in one district and the other 2 are separated between the other 2 existing districts. So anybody who gets a tavern name in their mind, just shoot it out and we'll just keep going until we get 4 that we love.
6.5 hours later.
I don't know why, but Thumb Dragons came up as a combo. It's just weird.
Thumb Dragons?
Thumb, like a thumb.
Yeah.
Thumbs up.
I'm going to write all of these down as we go.
I don't know what kind of place that would be.
And looking at some names like in the UK, like the Red Lion, the Crown, Plough, the King's Head, the White Hart.
King's Head, I like that. Is that a real place already?
Yeah, that's a pub name, the King's Head.
That must be why I like it. It's a good one. The Drider's Purse.
Yeah, you know what? The Driders, whatever, or just call it the Driders, could be like the slummy bar, because Driders are usually drow that have been cursed by Loth and turned into Driders. Like they still have their minds, but they have no control and they just have a thirst, and it'd be kind of neat if we called it something like that. And that's kind of like the Salty Dog Tavern, you know what I mean?
The Web Dog. The Webbed Dog.
You just like the Driders, or you want to have it something else like the Driders Rest, or
I like that's pretty cool. The Driders Rest is cool. Yeah.
Or Roost. Driders Roost.
Roost.
Yeah.
Or Rib.
The Driders Rib.
Yeah.
Sounds like a place you'd really want to go.
It's supposed to be a dump right here. I don't know.
Is this going to be a tavern, or just a pub, or what is this? What kind of place are you envisioning?
I mean, I think the place that they stay should be like it should have a tavern as well, only because it allows for more story elements. Plus, if one of the characters can't sleep in the night, he wants to come down, and the bartender's still there cleaning up or whatever. They don't all have to be inns and taverns. They can be, some are just inns, some are just taverns. We can just come up with names for different locations we think they're going to be at. We really don't have a timeline after they crash land, other than the fact that they know they're going to have to establish a place they can sleep every night for at least 2 weeks. That gets them in the door into the city, and into rooms. I think at that point, like all good D&D games, you always end up in a tavern at some point. That's where the story elements start to take off. Maybe you have a wizard playing games in the corner just freak out and just like he has to get thrown out by the bouncers, and that's the first thing you notice that's a little weird about the town, or like what's going on with that guy. Like he didn't seem like he was drunk, you know.
Looking at tavern names now, and one's the Queen's Head.
Well,
How
that
about the
would work.
Droughter's Head? The Droughter's Head.
The Drider's Head.
Yeah. So here's a tavern, the Bucket of Blood. That's a tavern in the UK. Bucket of Blood. I think that's where I want to go.
They offer drinks for vampires there.
Yeah, really.
Well, that's kind of inspiring. There could be an element of that in the city with the drow. They're like demonic kind of. They mess with black magic and stuff.
Yeah. Demons are rich with drow culture. Like they often summon demons to kind of find out more information about another house or something like that. They are very well known for using demons to get what they want.
We could have a shop or some kind of apothecary or something called Blood in the Bucket.
Yeah, that's kind of a new cool one. Like we'll definitely grab a few of these. We'll say, hey, yeah, that's definitely a location. Plus, it could be a contact as they get deeper and deeper into this, you know, little storylines, little spider webs. You know, you talk to this one guy, said, I bought flowers from, you know, this place over here, and then my wife went crazy the next day. Then they have to go to the flower shop, or, you know how that works, the whole...
British pubs, a lot of the names come from folklore. And some of them are random names like Frog and the Nightgown, but some of them do kind of incorporate folklore with the names. So is there any kind of real folklore that's, that
That's what I was
would be
thinking.
surrounded the city? Because that's another thing. Cities always have folklore.
That was something I think just as we were going out, we need to talk about a little bit more, like the folklore, the story of the city, the vibe, the feel, and all that, kind of narrow that down. And I think we did a little bit deciding it's going to be a drow city. The Orkney. I like that word just because it's got orc in it anyway. I think there should be some islands off the coast of this area, like almost like it was like sort of the whole Pangea thing where it kind of broken apart. There might be a few little archipelagos or something. Not that I want to get into another body of land right now, but
It's something to think about for if you want to link another quest from the city.
A gopher type quest, you know, go to this island, get this, bring it back, and all da-da-da-da. But it'd have to be obviously 12th level gopher quest.
Well, I'm not sure when to introduce players to the city before, you know, when they're lower levels. There could be some quests that send them to other areas that are more built for their level.
And that would allow them each like kind of side quest that they go on before they start the main quest would give them little hints and clues about something that's going to tie into the main quest. It wouldn't be the focus of why they go there to do it or whatever, but I think it should tie in so you can start dropping those breadcrumbs and start leading them in a direction as DMs like to do.
But then again, as this quest that we're talking about, it is kind of like their introduction to it.
Although we did say that, like, the city being the population it is, a lot of it would go unnoticed at first. That's why I think that bar encounter will be very critical to all of it, because it'll be a first-hand account of what it can do to a person. Maybe the mage just flat out murders someone, fireballs somebody to death right there in front of the party, and then throws himself through the window. You know what I mean? It's just a striking visual to see, like, what the hell just happened there. They're having a nice meal, having a good conversation. Perhaps they think that they're getting information from an elf that come to sit with them, but it's really just a distraction to what's really happening behind the scenes that suddenly grabs their attention, something like that. Little things. That's a little extreme, but, you know, at little things, you know, interject those moments of seeing someone under the influence or the effect of this crystal.
I dig it.
Okay, now if this is like 100 years in the future, then I guess like the campaign we're doing now, unless we went through some time portal, how would it wouldn't carry on to this quest, the current one we're on?
No. I would say that we are designing this not with no knowledge other than like having like Riven being an NPC, perhaps Cal pops up as an NPC if we chose to do that. I would say this is not a game that I'm going to run and your characters are going to be in. Like I sometimes I talk about it that way, but I don't mean it that way. It's just easier for me to like communicate those things. I'd say there's been peace for a while in the lands after, you know, the Great Wars that really ravaged things. Things are just starting to grow back, you know what I mean? Like 100 years for an oak tree or whatever, you know, how big is that? You know, I don't know. But like it's finally starting to get back to where it was beforehand. And now there are new times of trouble starting again, I would say. But like Riven being a drow, being an elf, you know, he lives, you know, however long, you know, we decide to let elves live in our own campaigns.
Because actually in your campaign, Riven is fairly young for a drow.
Yeah. So, I mean, he'll live to be 1,000 years old, most likely, if he's, you know, that lucky. That's the great thing about storytelling in Dungeons and Dragons, and especially like that's been beneficial to me over the last 30 years, is having players that I can now, that I no longer play with, you know, I can now take those characters that they developed and have histories and stories for, interactions with, and you just tie them in as NPCs in my future. Like I didn't have to come up with, you know, the Stonegriff family. They've been around for 30 years and they've passed on, you know, from generation to generation. So there's an underground market, right? Like who's bringing who's making this stuff? Because all we know is that deep down below, when the party finally goes, they'll find these crystals. Who's discovered and who's taking it, who's selling it, or who's crushing it up? Like, I feel like it should be a powder, almost like where it's like mix this into your drink or however you consume it. We haven't really talked about it that much. But like, I think that should be a pivotal character in the story too. The person who's distributing it to the city and the person who's receiving it in the city should be relatively prominent characters in the story arc.
Yeah, if it's coming from below, well below the Shadow Veil, and you've got, you know, you would think it'd either be a drow or maybe a dwarf, since you have dwarves within the Shadow Veil.
Oh, that's a great twist. What if it is like it's going through and there's a dwarven wizard who's discovered this and he's kind of selling it, not even making as much as the drow are making off of it in their own community, but like he thinks he's doing a, you know, I don't know, a service to his people by selling it off to the drow or something like that. Because you would think that whoever's manufacturing it is most likely going to be a drow. It's not going to be a dwarf, but like it would be cool if there was that little twist. I love throwing those in there, like with the queen and this other gnome that we created. They're kind of the backwards opposite of what they should be. It would be kind of neat in a way to use that element somewhat here.
And it would be easier for whoever is creating it, if they were dwarf, to have already established something up on the surface.
Yeah. Yep.
It'd be easier, much easier for a dwarf than a drow.
Yeah, maybe it's going through a human bar as it comes in, and it gets shipped out from there or handed over to the drow from there.
Well, things have changed for the drow though by this time. But once again, like you said, it's a twist that you may not expect.
I kind of dig that, like a drow and a dwarf working together somehow. He's the distributor from down below, and the drow is the one on the surface that's getting it to the sellers, to the people who, whether it be this gnome or anyone else.
So how are the dwarves going to fit in? Are they going to still, I guess they would still stay within their original cities?
Yeah, I would say the dwarves don't play a major role underground other than being of assistance to the party as they're traveling from the surface to eventually the Crystal Caverns. They will have to maybe go through the city, they can get outfitted there with anything they might need, and then they can be, maybe even a guide brings them, to the Underdark tunnels and says, this is where you have to go down for, 3 days, take a left, take a right at the glowing green stone or whatever. Yeah.
I was thinking about the dwarves, but I was going to suggest goblins because I love goblins. They'd make a nice, little, I was seeing them as chemists, or they're manufacturing the crystals or refining them or whatever it is they do. But I was starting to see dwarves as well, but maybe a mixture.
Yeah, a mixture would be kind of cool. a dwarf bossing around all these goblins.
What if there's one goblin chemist that's got like super intelligence? Like he's anti-goblin. He's really kind of like the smart gremlin in a way, where like he's super smart. Yeah.
That gives me ideas right away of like he's abnormally smart. He's the one who figured out how to like he's like a key in all of this somehow of the refining process.
He figured out how it all works and was able to come up with the process to refine it.
And he's got this dwarf who's kind of hiding him, you know.
Yeah,
like
it could be his partner.
Like,
yeah, partners.
Like, they're both kind of shady. Of course, the dwarf is really shady. Goblins are naturally shady, and I like the idea of a little handful of them. Like maybe there's the one chemist who's really smart, but then there's a bunch of runty ones that are a part of this dwarf's outfit.
That'd be a cool character to create, a smart goblin.
Yeah, that sounds like a role-playing dream right there for a DM, like getting to play like the multiple goblins, like where the head one is like, no, not like that, do it like this. And the other one's like this, and he's bashing his head. And the other's like, no, he told you to do it like this. And he hits it in the stomach, and, you know, like, oh, that's great. That's good stuff right there.
Don't put that in your mouth. Take it off your head. That's not for eating.
So this head chemist goblin, we need to name him and his dwarven partner, and they work out of where? Are they in tavern keepers, or are they underground? Are they black market people that we don't?
I was thinking like black market for sure, like underworld.
Or maybe we get the mountains, a deep cave.
Well, what if the dwarf works on the surface at a normal business and the goblin works underground for the black market, just because it would look weird if the other way around? Like, it almost seems to make sense. Like, the goblin deals with the black market stuff. The dwarf tries to keep it on the level, like the books and everything like that. And they just kind of work together that way.
We said there's tunnels and stuff underneath the city.
Yeah.
So he could have this little elevator shaft that goes down, kind of like a Batman thing, where it takes him down to the lair.
Yeah.
To the lab.
Yeah.
That's deep down in the Underdark.
If somehow the party does figure out about that, they could save themselves, like 2 weeks of travel or a week of travel time just by finding this and taking it down to these tunnels. Yeah. And it would explain how they're able to move it so quickly.
Yeah.
Like they're providing it for the distributors.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so we still need to name these two characters and another character in the Underdark they were dealing with, right? Where the crystals are probably coming to these guys. Then the chemist does what he has to do with the crystals, and then the dwarf distributes it. So we got to name those two guys, but the one thing that we need to remember, we need to still tie in, is the whole other world and the auditor and their plans of coming in. And like, we know that this is the surface of it. Like, they know that eventually people will start consuming this crystal. When and how do their influence come in, like, directly? Is it not until they've started traveling underground? I don't imagine, unless we see, like I said, one of those drones. One of them, like, they're enslaved to the Manatus, and so perhaps one of them is freed and he's able to get away and he's coming to the surface. Like, that could be an interesting NPC to tie in, just to get further information. They would be further along, I would think, if this is going to take them from 12 to 20.
Yeah.
So maybe by like level 15 they meet this creature. Or maybe the Drow have one prisoner as they're traveling through the Dwarven city, and they get to the Underdark tunnels. Maybe somewhere along the way they see one of these creatures from a balcony ledge overlooking the Drow city, Shadowvale, and they see that maybe a few of them are completely enslaved, and they're like, what are those creatures? We've seen, we've traveled from this side of Athalia to the other. We've never seen anything like it before. It could be a nice introductory too. They don't have to be personally involved in it. They could just see them, or they could be moved to try to free them.
I just had an idea. I don't know if it exactly tracks, but like a exotic hunter. He's like a super renowned hunter who's he's hunted everything and he's looking for new things. Goes and explores these caves. He's the one who stumbles upon it first, or he finds it. Maybe he survives just barely or something.
Maybe they run into him at the inn and tavern or whatever that they're staying at, or one of the nights that they're in town. People see him almost as crazy now or something like that. Like, yeah, sure, you saw this, buddy. Why don't you have any proof of it? You know, you've hunted dinosaur, you've hunted dragon. Where are these creatures? Prove it to us or something. You know, he could be like almost a laughing stock at this point, like where he swears he saw these creatures, but...
Yeah, like he has lore or exposition as a little threads to kind of prepare you. Will give you an idea of what's down there.
Yeah, that's a cool NPC.
Now I'm starting to drift and have him it be like his assistant who's gone mad. Nobody really believes what he says.
We need some names here. We've got names for locations that we can kind of pick from. We could probably easily come up with another, 5 or 10 of those. But the Goblin Chemist.
Treckle.
Blotus. Slung. Volnak. Wellington Devereaux.
Did they usually have 2 names? Like first name, last name, or is it just a singular name?
I don't know. I don't know generally, like, if they're just... I would imagine that there's clans and different family names. I would think, you might have the Rockgut clan, like Stoneface Rockgut might be one, or Wellington Rockgut is kind of nice. I'm going to write it down.
Well, to keep the name from sounding too human, kind of said Wellington, Wevel? Weveltorn? Or Wevelton? That'd be a cool last name. Bentic Weveltorn.
Bentic. What about the dwarf, his partner?
What if he has like a pharmacist has got an apothecary? I mean, that's his thing, that's how but he needed a chemist to kind of make it a little more pure, make it... Yeah. He knows the properties of alchemy, but he's not really trained to create the, what we call the elixirs and the medicines. Yeah, he's like a pharmacist instead of a true alchemist.
What's his name?
Rumbor?
Rompor?
Rumbor?
First name or last name?
And I keep thinking these as first names, but then I start thinking they end up being better last names.
What about Talc for the first name?
Talc.
T-A-L.
Rumbor.
And his shop is a dwarven apothecary. Apothecary, that too. All right, so let's step back to the beginning again. They fought the Kraken, the Crystal Kraken, the squid. They are shipwrecked. They're told that the earliest their ship can be fixed. I feel like 2 weeks isn't enough for this campaign. I feel like it's going to be.
Well, it's just. I guess how long it's going to take for repairs is really not really relevant. It's not like they have to get back on the ship.
That's true. It can get repaired.
I mean, they're just trying to get from one place to the other. They can always get a ship later. Yeah. To take them somewhere else.
It'd be funny if they got halfway through the campaign. It's like, fuck it. Let's get on the ship and go. They can do this.
Yeah. What would be the grab to make the party want to take this quest? It's got to be something personal. It's got to give them a drive to want to do this. What's in it for them?
That's why it's always easier to know the players before you start the campaign sometimes, because you're like, okay, I can tie that into this. I mean, they're probably a group of heroes that have been traveling around, taking quests and doing good wherever they can, reaping the rewards of it, but it's probably not, I would assume, most of the party's intentions to reap the rewards. They're out to do good and save people. So I would say that this has just been their course over the last few years, going from adventure to adventure. Sniffing out the taverns, finding the things where they can really help. I think the most is to find in the cities where they're trapped here for, they don't know how long, 2 weeks probably at least. What are they going to do? They do need to have some kind of emotional tie or some kind of moral tie to want to be driven to help.
I'm trying to think of maybe somebody they know could be kidnapped and taken.
Okay.
Or
What if it's something as simple as they know that they have a friend in this town. They're like, oh, we haven't seen him in years. When they meet him, they find that he's been already influenced by this, and that gives them a reason to try to find a cure for this or some way to help them out.
My brain was just thinking, trying to find a catch to get them to want to go down there. And, somebody being kidnapped is one, or going to save somebody.
We could tie in both ideas where they did know somebody in this town, and maybe multiple people have been kidnapped. Maybe it's not just one. Because Artie had talked at one point about having one of the family members of the royal family that rule the city, them being addicted to this stuff. Maybe they owe so much money to somebody in the Underdark that they're one of the people that got brought down and got mixed into it, and now they're captives of the Manatus and those folk. I don't like that. I do like the kidnapping thing, but like, why are the Manatus or any of these creatures that come from this other world, why would they be taking prisoners and not just killing people? Unless they're a prisoner of the Drow, which could get them that much deeper into the story. Like, they learn the surface stuff of what's going on with the crystals and people's addictions. They find out that someone has been, well, no, that wouldn't make sense if the royal family is already Drow. Unless the Drow in Shadowvale, there's opposition to the Drow who are living on the surface. Maybe it's caused a great divide between the two of them. And this is an act of retaliation somehow. The Drow that are still living in Shadowvale go and take the queen's first son or something like that.
I guess we got to find the chain of events. What's, now that we've got the addiction kind of, we brought that in. The addiction's coming from these crystals that were found. And when you get down to the Manatus and these other creatures, is it that maybe when the dwarf and the goblins were mining, trying to get to these crystals, that they opened up a cavern that now released these creatures? These creatures are coming to the surface. Were we still going to do that kind of?
I would say their main goal is to definitely come to the surface and take over the entire planet. However, I like the idea that you came up with. The dwarves were mining. Perhaps they did find these crystals and they thought, oh, if we dig a little deeper, maybe we'll find more. And in doing so, that allowed them to more quickly move to the surface. But I feel like there's almost like the story element. There's the beginning, the middle, and the end. Like, the beginning is they crash land, they get a place to stay, they start seeing the effects of the crystals on the surface. Maybe they don't even encounter any weapons or anything made from these crystals yet. Maybe that happens when they get further down. I don't know. That doesn't really matter. They get the surface stuff here. They get a quest to go below ground. Yeah, that's as far as I've gotten in my head right now. Like, after they get there, obviously there's so much more to discover, especially after they get to this level where all the creatures are coming through the portal and starting to take over the caverns. The caverns are all starting to turn to these crystals, and it's growing. Maybe they even see the effects of it actually physically growing if they take a time, camp out one night in the Underdark. All of a sudden around them, there's a whole new forest of these crystals that kind of sprung up overnight. They can see that it's making its way to the surface. Even though the unintended, I feel like the addiction part of it should be completely unintended. Like, these creatures, maybe they are aware of the fact that it can do this, but they plan on taking over either way. This is just a side effect that this goblin chemist discovered, and it's only aided the people of this other world, or the creatures and denizens of this other world.
So exactly what does this addiction do to people?
Let's talk just game talk for a second here. If they're going to cast a fireball, instead of their normal 3d8 plus 8 or whatever it would do, it doubles their damage, or it intensifies every spell. Maybe it increases their intelligence if they save, a constitution save. So they're moving up in intelligence and their powers are growing faster. They're learning faster. They're able to stay awake longer. It's such a it's having a major effect on their brain, and especially the part of their brain when it comes to magic. And so it's enhancing their spells and increasing their ability to use them.
Okay, and so what's the negative?
The negative is that there's a certain chance every time you take it that a certain madness starts to creep into you. Maybe you lose 2 points of intelligence if you don't save. Not that anybody's going to take it in the party. Maybe they will, and we will come into a situation where we need this rule to be in effect. But like, I think every time you take it, there should be a high percent, like a 75% chance you lose intelligence. Or I feel like you should be slipping into a madness where you have less control over your thoughts and your intelligence.
Okay, I mean, every party's got magic users in one form or another. So the magic users in the party get addicted. They get introduced to this drug. Somebody approaches them, and what was our dwarf's name now?
Talc Rumbor.
Talc Rumbor.
Yeah.
The magic users are told that they need to see Talc Rumbor. Somebody comes up and they say, give me some gold and I'll tell you how to enhance your magic powers beyond what you can ever believe. And then he introduces them to Talc, and he sells them some of his, it's going to be a powder, right? Not elixir.
I'd say a powder. Yeah. Like, I feel like it should be something that maybe consumed, like you mix it into a tea and drink it or something like that. That way, like, you could technically leave it on a table and pass out, and somebody else could come along and be like, oh, free drink. And then, because it would probably have the same effect on everyone. But most people would be more of a negative effect, because if you don't have the ability to cast magic or spells or anything like that, you wouldn't get the benefits of it. Maybe you'd get the benefits of like not needing to sleep or not needing to whatever.
A clear mind or something.
Yeah, like you'd get that, but you wouldn't get the other benefits. There's always that chance of just that addiction, your desire. Those who benefit from it want it more because they want more power, they want more intelligence.
Yeah.
Those who fail it want it more in hopes to fix themselves or feel like they did the first time that they had it. Kind of like a typical drug situation.
Yeah, maybe after every long rest you got to roll, and if you fail it, then you're like having a bad side effect, having a big down day.
Yeah.
Where your intelligence drops, and whatever your magic ability score is, that drops by 2 or whatever.
Yeah.
You get to roll a D4.
Oh yeah, you could just use a D4 and just be like, you lose 3 this time or 1 this time. And there was talks about having like a slum, like a tent city area where the party that's playing this would go to at some point, probably to meet up with a priest or something who's doing some outreach work trying to help these people. But this community could be a community that's been hit by the hardest because they're not typically magic users, so they're only getting a huge negative outcome when you kind of travel through. They're not, contributing to society anymore. They're just kind of living in their tents and just barely surviving.
They're not magic users, so when they take it, they get a euphoric feeling because they're getting all this. Their mind is opening, and it's this huge euphoric feeling. But then after you use it too much, then it starts really giving you the major negative effects instead of it just being random for non-magic users. And that could be what this tent city is about.
That's a great
These
idea.
are people that they kind of got addicted to it too much, and then they kind of became useless and weren't any good to anybody in town. They lost their jobs, so they kind of became outcasts.
Okay, so what if this is all intentional? Like we talked about these creatures coming through and taking over the planet. Let's say they do have a better knowledge that this stuff can be used in this way. What if it has a long-term, like if they use it long enough, like they start to turn into denizens of this other world. Like maybe they start growing crystals, or like their mind becomes part of the auditor. Like he can hear the auditor's call and what the auditor wants him to do because he is the fountain of knowledge. Like what if that's a big part of it. What if the auditor is reaching out through people to see through their eyes, to see the progress of what's going on?
Yeah. And it almost kind of gets to where you can control them, like vampire can control his minions.
Yeah, and it makes it that much easier when
His
it's time to
victims.
take over. He's already got armies of just zombies, basically, that he can use as fodder, and then send out the Manitus and send out the Terror Worms and just let them wreak havoc. Artie looks like he had to drop out here. He said, "Sorry, guys, I got to tip out. I was thinking of a name that started with the letter Z. I did a bunch of sketches, and I got a bunch more ideas tonight. Hopefully I can get them done to show you guys. Mostly just like local NPC and stuff that we were talking about." He's got it now. These guys have to have a tie-in with the gnome we created last week too. Wrinkle, was that what we call it? Yeah, Rinks. They've got to be selling him some of the stuff to distribute as well, because we had talked about him being kind of naive to he's not sure what it is, but it's selling and he's making money off of it. And
yeah, I think once they get to the end, we need to kind of have a really good hook as a way to get any of the magic users to want whatever it is that's going to give them an enhancement. Because they'll probably think it's something like one of these elixirs that, like a health potion or something like that something's going to give you a boost in your magic. Yep. So they want that in their little arsenal. It's got to be something benign like that I don't know if they're going to overhear maybe some other wizards, or maybe some other wizards approach them. But it's got to sound legit to them, not just some shady guy saying, "Hey, try this."
What if this stuff at the beginning, like, there's only a 10% chance the first time you try it that you have a negative effect. Second time, it's, maybe 15%, or like there's a 5 to 10% jump every usage, or every time you've taken it, like from that point on, it gets more and more difficult. Because that way, there would be those people who are seeing the benefits of it, almost like wonder drugs nowadays. Like, you don't discover until 10 years later that they're causing cancer. But at the time, they're letting you stay awake longer. They're allowing you to expand your spell library and stuff like that. So you could talk to a wizard who said, "Yeah, this stuff is really amazing. Like, it's making me more powerful than even my teacher ever imagined he could have been." And you could talk to reasonable folk who haven't been reached, it hasn't really sunk its teeth into them yet.
Or maybe it really doesn't have any real negative effects until later, much later on.
Yeah.
So that that's why you've got so many wizards that are so enthralled with it, because they think it's wonderful. It's really opened up their minds. If it's a case of where you've got some party members that bought some and they're starting to take it, we need to find a way to get them to that tent city. That's where they see the real problem and evils of the drug. And then, but they're already into it. And what if the spellcasters are saying, "Okay, well, I'm just not going to take it anymore." Every morning you have to roll a Constitution saving throw. And if you fail it, your addiction to it is so strong. The only thing that's going to fix it is to take some. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, it is going to maybe start damaging you, or start, you instantly lose whatever your spellcasting ability is. You instantly, it drops in half, and your hit points are drop in half. Everything just drops. It's almost like being fatigued, and so you're worthless unless you take a hit. And so your only recourse is, somebody in the tent city knows that Talc knows how to end this addiction. So then they got to make their way back to Talc, and he does know how. He does have a remedy. He does have a cure to get you off of this drug, but it requires you to go down into the Underdark to get certain components that he doesn't have.
There you go. That's perfect. That's it.
So you get some party members addicted. They have to take some, or else it may eventually kill them if they go too many days without it.
I think instead of it killing them, they lose their intelligence and start becoming more and more savage, because I think the people of the world are going to want to use this crystal to benefit them and further their goals. And by doing so, you get a bunch of insane people just attacking people on the streets, and the population slowly starts to drop, kind of like a zombie apocalypse.
Or that's maybe what the tent city is.
Yeah.
It's these people that can't get it anymore. Maybe they're okay some days. It depends on the day. When they wake up, they may be like a point where they're just benign. They're not hurting anybody. They can function, but they're not functioning at a great level, but there are times when they can get violent or they could get unpredictable.
And I think we should see at least that one display, like I was talking about, maybe the first night or second night that they're sitting in the tavern eating. A wizard just suddenly snaps, loses his mind, and incinerates someone with an incredibly powerful fireball.
Or they go crazy and they steal something of theirs. The parties, they get the fight ensues, a big bar brawl, and something gets stolen, and then somebody says, "Well, I saw one of those tent people take it. If you want it back, you're gonna have to go to Tent City and get it back."
Gives them a reason to go there. Yeah.
Yep.
And that's where they can encounter this priest who is trying to do his best to figure out what's going on and help the people of the city.
Maybe talc is, at least he doesn't have the components to make the cure to the elixir to cure their addiction, but he gives them a watered down version of the crystal drug that can at least keep these people a little more stable.
That's a good idea. I like that. I dig that a lot.
So, but this could get them. I mean, the hook is getting them addicted, and then they find out that there is a problem with this great
miracle potion,
potion.
Okay, so we got Wrinkle who's selling this stuff. He's getting it from these guys, I would imagine, or through a contact. What if he's being forced to sell it? What if it's not by his choice? What if word has come down through the royal guard or something like that that's saying the queen would prefer it if you keep selling the stuff? Because we had talked about tying her into it, because we wanted Wrinkle to be kind of a shady character who deals with the black market, but at the same time kind of on the level. Like, he's honest, he's straightforward, he's a straight shooter.
What species is he?
He's a gnome. He's that guy with the big mustache we talked about.
Oh, yeah.
He owns the shop, the kind of curiosity shop with all the magic.
Is he a smooth talker? Is he going to be a smooth talker kind of guy?
I think he's going to be a high charisma, like he can woo the ladies, or he can sell you whatever he wants to sell you. I would say he's that kind of a guy, but he's also a little nervous about being forced to sell something in his shop he's not comfortable with because he knows nothing about it or something like that. Because we want him to be innocent of this crime, at least. I'm sure he's guilty of many more, but this one I feel like he's like, no, I would never do something like this. Maybe he's obviously of the old school, the people who lived there before the Drow came in or something. And so he's an older gentleman. He's been there long enough to see his city go from what it was to what it is now. So he still has faith in his city, love for his city, but he just doesn't like where it's gone to, especially being forced to sell for the Drow.
What's the queen's
motive?
With all this.
Well, we talked about that kind of moral balance for her. Like, if one of her family members becomes addicted now, normally the Drow probably wouldn't give a rat's ass. But if we're going to use a situation where he's important to the family, then she's in a position where so far she's been using it to just hoard in, a dragon's hoard of gold, most likely. The stuff is selling like faster than, hotcakes. Okay. So it's a financial benefit for her or the city, as she's probably, relaying it. I would like some kind of layer of padding between her and I think that assistant would be the good person, the go-between, the one who relays the message and says, Wrinkle, the queen wants you to sell this stuff.
And she would be funding Talcumber's apothecary.
There, we could find like maybe a money trail that the party could trace back and be like, holy shit, this goes way higher than we thought it was.
I think this was coming together real well. I think we're finding a good hook.
Tonight was incredibly productive, and we got a lot done, and I think the flavor of the city is really starting to show itself now. I think deciding that major decision to say that, Veilport would make sense if it was a shoot-off from Shadowvale and as a Drow-run city. So that when we finally put the nail in that coffin and said that's what it is, I think things starting to click together a little bit more and more. Just looking at the streets, I can almost see a bird flying overhead. I can look down and just kind of see where things are. I think there should be an arena in this town, like somewhere where the Drows can vent their anger and have people fight in an arena. I think that would be a cool location. I don't know where it would tie in. Perhaps like these drug-addled fiends are going to the arena to get their rage out, and like people are betting on them, and there's a whole world of possibility. But we really narrowed a lot of it down tonight, I think.
Yeah, I kind of hate to go much further with that already.
But yeah, that was an eventful night, and I hope you guys all enjoyed watching it. We will have another episode for you up in about 2 weeks. Until then, stay tuned. Keep an eye on the Vodkast. Don't forget to subscribe. It would be a huge help for the channel. We'd like to all quit our day jobs and just do this full time. Thank you again, Jim.
Thank you, Jay.
Don't go to sleep with a catch it in your pocket.